Welcome into the Next Up podcast. I'm your host, Adam Breneman. A special episode for you guys this week. One of the biggest games of the year in college football is happening on Friday. Oregon against Washington for the Pac-12 championship game. This game has massive implications on college football as a whole. We have Michael Penix Jr. against Bo Nix, a Heisman Trophy potentially on the line. Kalen DeBoer against Dan Lanning, two of the best coaches in the game. We have a college football playoff appearance on the line. This is essentially a play-in game for the playoff. I'm fortunate enough to have a unique perspective into both of these programs. This summer, I traveled to Washington and traveled to Oregon to visit with their football programs, and I have exclusive content with the biggest names in the program for all of you. Me and my team got an inside look at what makes these head coaches who they are, how they operate their programs. We got to go to practice, see the facilities, spend time with both of these quarterbacks. I know one thing. On Friday, we will see two of the best quarterbacks in college football and two of the best head coaches in the game right now. It's the last time these teams will battle as part of the Pac-12. They'll be in the Big Ten in 2024. On this trip, I recorded podcasts with Oregon head coach Dan Lanning, Oregon defensive coordinator Tosh Lupoi, and Oregon offensive coordinator Will Stein. At Washington, I filmed podcasts with head coach Kalen DeBoer and quarterback and Heisman candidate Michael Penix Jr. I went through and picked the best parts, the best segments, the best clips from each of those interviews and compiled them into this podcast for you. The podcast you need to see and you need to watch to get a better understanding of the stakes, of the personalities, and the people playing in Friday's biggest game of the year in college football. Next up. What's up, guys? It's Adam Breneman. It's now holiday season. You guys are looking for gifts. I'm telling you right now, check out our merch store. We have super high-quality merch. My favorite is this college football tee. If you're a college football fan, you need this thing. We have college basketball tees, tons of merch for college sports fans. Use the code ADAMB15 for 15% off at checkout. Go get some college football merch and check out our other styles today. Please make sure to subscribe to this channel, whether you're on YouTube or audio. Please like this, share it with a friend, leave a comment, follow us on social media at Next Up with Adam. Anything you can do to show support, we'd really appreciate. And it'll allow us during this offseason coming up to travel around the country and give you the biggest names in college football on the podcast. To start, I'll take you inside the coaching journey of Dan Lanning and Kalen DeBoer, how they got to where they are, who they are as people, what drives them as coaches. I had personal conversations with both of them. Here's the best parts. Let's start with Dan Lanning.
I wanted to start with, there's a lot I want to talk about, but I want to start with this. You got this job, 35 years old, working your whole career probably to be a head coach with that goal. What was going through your mind when you got that call officially offering you the job?
You know, you never think that your first job as a head coach could also be your last job as a head coach, right? And for me, it's just, you know, the excitement of knowing, like, no, this is a top 10 team. This is like the best of the best. And blessed and fortunate, I've been around a lot of great coaches. I've got to work for a lot of great coaches, but for this to be my first opportunity, you know, I'm pretty lucky to be in this set.
Yeah. What was it about, you know, when they offered the job? I'm sure there are a lot of opportunities that came up over the last few years. You were becoming a big name in college football. What was it about this place from an alignment standpoint, or just knowing, like you said, that this could be a last job that made this the place you wanted to take?
Yeah, I think, you know, innovation. When I think of Oregon, I think of innovation, right? I think about being on the cutting edge. And as you know, college football has changed so much in the last 3 years, last 10 years, that I always felt like they were going to be ahead of the curve, right? They were always going to have a plan for what's next, how do you adapt? And I remember being a GA at Arizona State, and we played against Marcus Mariota in Oregon, and what that meant. You know, my first time ever being here was when I landed here on the plane. I'd never been here, but I knew from afar, like, that's, you know, what Oregon was and was to become. And then when you figure out the support that exists for the program, the alignment with the administration, like the narrow, single vision of where it's headed, like everything every box checked. And then maybe most important for me is I wanted to be somewhere where I was excited to raise my family. And, you know, you move a bunch as a coach. So getting to be somewhere you can say I can be here for forever, like that's what made this place check. Yeah.
Take me through the process of once you get the job, first-time head coach, all the things. That's what the fans don't always realize, like the whirlwind of trying to retain the roster, trying to hire staff, trying to figure out, like, who's committed, who's not? Like what was that like the first, 48, 72 week on the job?
Yeah, you're drinking out of a fire hose. Like, it's nonstop. And for me, at least, I don't know if you remember this or not, but I accepted the job, but I was at Georgia, and we were about to go play in the Orange Bowl against Michigan. You know, I wanted to, finish the job. And that was one thing I was really grateful for our administration, to give me the opportunity to still finish, the job there at Georgia. So, I flew out here, accepted the job, kind of did a press conference, and I turned around and flew back. I met with as many players as I could, in 24 hours. And then you're really working the phone. So I would get up and do Georgia from, 5 or 6 a.m. in the morning till 6 at night, getting ready for the Orange Bowl and the national championship game. And then 6 at night, well, it was, it's only 3 o'clock out here. So I'd start working on Oregon. And we did, Zooms. I really had an idea, ever since I was a GA in 2012 at Arizona State, I started making a list of potential coaching hires. I have it saved in my phone. It's like every elite coach I've ever been around, like, oh, that's a guy I'd want to hire. Yeah. The difference is I thought I'd be hiring at Eastgate Middle School, right? But when you get to Oregon, you can go hire anyone you want. So that list, that's really where it started. I hired a lot of guys off that list, and there was a couple positions I wanted to, figure out, some pieces. But, retention's really, that's hard to figure out. Now, we've had a lot of roster turnover. But that's also the reality now of college sports. So you have to hire great people around you that have the same vision as you and understand exactly what you're looking for to accomplish what you need to in that, those first 48 weeks.
Yeah, you just mentioned preparing from the time you were a GA to when you're going to be in those shoes, making those hires. What was the one thing that, when you became a head coach, that maybe, I don't want to say you weren't prepared for, but that surprised you, or that you were like, man, you can only prepare so much until you're actually in the shoes? What was that one thing that?
For me, it's time, right? There's the things you fell in love doing, the things you fell in love doing as a coach. Like, I always loved, coordinating a defense. I always loved watching film and prep. But what you realize once you become the head coach is, as soon as you walk in the building, somebody's knocking at your door saying, hey, coach, how do you want this done? How do you want that done? And you learn to really appreciate people that take the bull by the horns and figure it out. And sometimes it's not done exactly how you want it, but you appreciate the fact that they made the effort to do that. But managing your time is by far the biggest piece, because it's not your time anymore. It's everybody else's time.
Yeah. Was there anything when you got here that you noticed around the program, or anything from personnel, facility, that you wanted to fix right away, or you wanted to change right away?
There were some things we really wanted to attack, and I'm grateful again that here they were willing to, make some, some changes, right? We went to go hire the absolute best of the best. There weren't really, limitations when it came to that. We knew we wanted to enhance our nutrition program, and that's really gone to another level. The innovation of us building new facilities as we move forward. We have some new projects that we're, piecing together that I think puts us, again, at the cutting edge and at the lead in college football.
I want to dive into your journey to get to this point a little bit. It's interesting. Like, it's not traditional. A lot of twists and turns in it. What was the point when it all started that you knew you wanted to be a football coach?
So I've always known I wanted to coach. Yeah. I was a guy that kind of grew up loving basketball as a kid. I wanted to go play, with the Orlando Magic, like me, Penny Hardaway, Shaquille O'Neal, like that was great. And then somewhere right around 7th grade, I kind of pieced together, okay, I don't think this is going to happen. Like, I'm
good self-awareness.
I'm not the best basketball player in Richmond, Missouri, where I graduated 92 people. So I got to reset. And I had a PE teacher, his name was Ken Simmons, in middle school, and he just made, like, PE was obviously my favorite subject, but he made every single day a competition. He made it so fun to walk in that room, and that's kind of where I had the realization, like, this coaching, teaching thing could really be for me. And so I think, honestly, from then on, I knew once I'm done playing, I'm going to coach. I'm going to teach. Both my parents were teachers, but I just never realized what level. I thought I'd be a high school coach probably forever.
Yeah, and you were a high school coach, right, when you started your career? So how did it start? Like, take us through that journey a little bit. High school coach, and then I've heard a little bit of a story of, like, you handwritten notes to every coach. I got to hear this story.
So, I was an elementary PE teacher, right? So I would teach elementary PE during the day, and then I'd drive over to Park Hill South High School. I'd normally start there in the morning for weights, go teach, my teaching job, and then I'd go do weights or football practice after school every day. And I just kind of always had this hunger to do a little bit more than what you do in high school, right? I really wanted to be, all ball. Yeah. And whatever level you're at, you always think that the level above you, all they do is football. Now being at college, you realize all the other fires that people put out and the recruiting and all the other pieces that go with it. But, Yeah, I had a desire early, now playing at an NAIA school where I didn't have a lot of connections. I didn't know anybody really in college football. So I started writing letters. My wife would give me a hard time. I'd come home from work and I'd pull up, my computer and I'd just start going through every staff in the nation, like literally, and I'd email and just trying to make connections, and honestly didn't get a lot of responses. So, I've told this story a lot of times, but eventually, a guy named Keith Patterson, who I'd met at a coaching clinic down in Tulsa, gave me a call back. Todd Graham and his staff had just taken the job at Pitt. Yeah. This is back when we were recruiting you.
Yeah.
And, he said, hey, we might have something for you. I'll call you after signing day. And signing day kind of came and went. I didn't get a call, but I told my wife, this is the first time that I've actually had a Division I coach say, hey, we might have a shot, might have a job for you. So then I drove out to Pittsburgh. I went and taught that day, and I got my car and I drove to Pittsburgh and waited to meet with the staff. And there's a lot of details to that. I mean, it's a long drive. I remember changing into a suit at a gas station before I got there.
They weren't even there, right?
They weren't there. Yeah. So when I showed up, I'm waiting in the lobby for several hours, and a guy named Eric Thatcher comes up. He's a good friend today, works for the 49ers, but he comes up and he goes, oh yeah, all the coaches are at Happy Valley. They're at Penn State for a clinic. So they weren't even there. So I stayed the night that night, waited to meet with Keith the next day. He said, well, I got a job for you. It was $800 a month. I have a wife and 2 kids right now at this point and a mortgage. And I said, yeah, it makes sense. Let's go. Yeah. So that was the start. Drove back, basically resigned from my job there and, in Missouri, and then came right back out and started as a GA there at Pitt.
How'd you make a name for yourself as a GA?
This has really been for me in every role that I've ever been. I try to be the absolute, one, it's a competition every day when I walked in the building, right? And it didn't matter what role I was in, I wanted to make sure that I was the best one in that role comparative to everybody else in that role. I think the other thing that I embraced really early is I'm going to do all the jobs that nobody wants to do. And what you find is everybody wants to game plan, everybody wants to watch film, but there's not that many guys that want to pour a cup of coffee. There's not that many guys that want to put together the scouting report. There's not that many guys that want to create, a great playbook. And so I started by saying, okay, what's the jobs that nobody wants to do, and I'm going to be the best at it. And I always felt like you wanted to put yourself in a position where if that guy leaves for another job, he has to take you because you're the guy that knows how to do it. You're the guy that knows how he likes his call sheet built. And that's kind of what I did. That's what I really focused on. And I didn't realize at that point how much ball I didn't know, right? I thought I knew football, but I didn't really know football at all. And I had a lot to learn. So I tried to shut up and listen whenever, guys with a lot more experience were talking in the room. And then I tried to work really hard. I mean, I spent a lot of nights up in the office. It was sleepless nights, but you have to separate yourself in some way.
And you made a reputation from what I've heard as a great recruiter, even when you were a GA. You were focused on recruiting. I think that's where a lot of GAs went wrong. I remember when I was at Arizona State and I was a GA, people talking about you and saying, when Dan Lanning was a GA, he was a dynamic recruiter. That's what you have to be if you want to. And I was like, all right, I guess I'm going to recruit then. Yeah. What went into that? Because I feel like in college football, a lot of people don't realize how big of a part of the job that is. And as a GA, you can make an impact on that.
Huge impact. And for me, I think the thing I realized really quick is, all right, you work hard, you care about it, you're learnable and adaptable. All those things are great. But nobody's going to hire a young coach because of what he knows. Yeah. Right? They're going to hire a young coach because of the value he brings to the program. Well, the number one way to bring value in college football is player acquisition. So, I started early. What I kind of did when I got to Arizona State is I looked at the map, and they give these maps of this coach has this area, this coach has this area. Well, I found the map, and nobody had Kansas, right? So I was like, I'm going to be the best recruiter in Kansas JCs. And I'd work the phone every single night, and I never got to go on the road. As a GA, you don't get to go on the road. So I always had a great excuse of why, hey, I can't come see you, but I'm going to send, this coach to come see you. I'm going to get by there next time. But just selling yourself every day as a coach that can make an impact. And, I ended up signing a couple guys that started for us there at ASU. And I think down the road where that paid dividends is Mike Norvell gets his first head coaching job, and he says, okay, Dan was on the other side of the ball, but I know he's going to sign players. I know he's going to work hard. And, later on, Kirby Smart hiring you because he knows what you're going to do from that. But for me, that's always the number one way you can provide value in college football is bringing players on board.
Yeah. During that time where you were GA to ASU from Pitt, you mentioned you have a family. I mean, you're hardly making any money. As a GA, you're making $1,000 a month, maybe. I had a good school.
Pay raise when I was a GA at Alabama. I was getting $1,200 a month.
Yeah, okay.
That was good. I had 3 kids.
Yeah. What was that like? I mean,
well, it didn't make a lot of sense. It didn't make a lot of sense at all, and I'm just grateful my wife never said no. You know, we always, I always save for opportunities. So when I stopped teaching elementary PE, I pulled out my teaching retirement from Missouri. That was $18,000, right?
Wow.
So that kind of made ends meet for a while, and then I went to Arizona State, and I was kind of still living off of, I was piecing that together. Mm-hmm. And then when I went to Sam Houston State, I started making money. I was a DB coach, and it wasn't six figures, but I had enough to support my family. But even there, I was saving in case another opportunity came up again to where I wasn't going to make enough. Yeah. So it was never about how much you're making. It was always about where can I get the best opportunity. I always chased opportunities, not the dollars. So whenever I got a chance to be a GA at Alabama, I had a little nest egg to hey, I can make it 12 months on this. It might be ramen noodles, right? Yeah. We were on EBT. We didn't have insurance, right? Yeah. That's all true. But it was worth it for the opportunity to get around people that matter and good coaching programs.
And that means that your family and your wife had the belief that you would figure it out.
Yeah, yeah. I'm lucky she did. I'm lucky she did because, it was really 2011. My first full-time coaching job, in Division I football was 2016. Mm-hmm. So it was 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 before I ever really was making any money that could take care of things.
Yeah. So how'd the process then from GA at Alabama to the full-time job at Georgia? What was that process like? Because I heard a story today, talked to your defensive coordinator, who said that they were trying to keep you at Alabama, and you went with Coach Smart.
Yeah, so there's actually a stop in between there. So I was with Coach Smart, Coach Lupoi. That staff was an amazing staff. We had a bunch of tons of head coaches that were sitting around that table with Nick every day, and Kirby left to go take the job at Georgia, and this is the same time Mike Norvell got the job at Memphis. So I went with Mike to Memphis. That's right. And I was the inside linebackers coach there for a couple years. And then there was some movement on Kirby's staff, and we talked, and obviously we're familiar with each other, and I got hired as the outside linebackers coach there at Georgia. Well, at the same time, there was potential opening there at Alabama, but at this point I'd already committed. My chips were already on the table, and I was all in with Coach Smart and Georgia. So I've got to be around really, really good people, but it's crazy the connections you'll make that lead to opportunities later on.
Yeah. You mentioned the keeping a list of people you're going to hire as you progress in your coaching career. During your time throughout the ranks of college football, how were you preparing to be a head coach? Were you keeping a coach's manual? Were you keeping notes on how you were going to handle discipline, how you were going to handle academics when you got your opportunity?
Yeah, I think I always took good notes as far as a guy sitting on the outside of the room. As okay, this is how he did it. I would do it the same or not. I think I've learned to be myself in this process, but ultimately, whatever job I was in, I was always preparing myself for the next one. Mm-hmm. By doing a good job in the job I had, right? Trying to make sure I was the best at what I was doing. But, Mel Tucker was a great guy to learn from when I was there at Georgia. As him as the defensive coordinator, every time he'd make a call, I'd kind of go back after the game and say, okay, how would I have done that? Yeah. And I learned a lot from. One of the biggest things you take away from this Saban tree is quality control, right? And really evaluating after a game. What are the notes that you made after the game? How could we have prepared different? What were our preparation errors? For me, it was the same thing when I'm talking about job preparation. Okay, how did Kirby handle this? How did Nick handle this? And how would I have handled it different? That's something I think I always took, detailed notes on that kind of prepare me for down the road.
Yeah. Talking about that journey to get here, I feel like anyone who's had as much success as you've had, you catch a break at some point, right? Something just goes your way and you're like, man, I was grinding and now I see the light where it's going to end up. What was that moment for you?
That's hard. Because there's been several of them, right? Yeah. There's several moments where I'm like, okay, I can make it. Either being on the wrong end of it where maybe you're not having that much success, but you see this guy that made it and you're like, I can do that. If this guy can make it, I can make it. And I had a lot of those moments early in my career. Later in my career, I just so many opportunities where you're just pinching yourself that you're like, I can't believe I'm in this moment. Being a graduate assistant in Alabama with that staff that we had was extremely special. Mike giving me an opportunity at Memphis. It's one of the best quality of life jobs I think I've ever had, being at Memphis, where you knew you were going to win. You get to coach really hard, tough-nosed players. That was really, a lot of fun. And then getting to go to Georgia and coach, some of the best of the absolute best around some of the best of the best. Being in a national championship game, there's nothing that really compares to those feelings.
Yeah.
Next up, this is Kalen DeBoer. Let's go back to
December 2021, when you walked in this team meeting room with your first meeting as the head coach of Washington.
Yep.
What was going through your mind when you walked through the door?
Well, it happened so fast. I mean, you're, coaching at Fresno State on Thanksgiving Day against San Jose, and things really happen Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and by Monday morning you're getting offered a job and talking to your team, and that's an emotional piece on that end because I love that place. It was awesome, but knew just this was too good of an opportunity. Was so fired up, and came up here and met with the team on that. I think it was a Monday night, and it was pretty easy to get a feel of how important being really good was to them, and that there was a lot of really high character guys who cared a lot about each other, as well as this program. And so I could even feel that in the room. I had their attention, and you always do when it's your first day, right, coming in as a head coach. But pulled them off into little kind of side pocket groups, what we would probably now call our unity council, but a lot of the leadership guys in leadership roles, met with them and got a really good idea of what it was that they were missing. And it wasn't, it was just a few things. And I think we brought that to the table as a coaching staff, and that led to a great season last year.
What made you believe there were a lot of jobs open at that time on the West Coast? You had success at a bunch of other stops. What made you believe that this was the right job to take and the right time to take it?
There was just enough, people that I knew that had either been here and coached here, just enough contacts that I understood kind of this place. I had coached here in 2017 and saw what the environment was when I was at Fresno State as a coordinator. And that was coming off of a 2016, playoff run that they had here. And so it was electric. We had a silent cadence, it was loud. And, there's just this whole focus on the dogs that Seattle has.
Yeah.
And it's a special community that way. We do have an NFL team that does, is awesome. Major League Baseball team, and, now hockey's doing well as well. But, the dogs is what this place is all about. And so the focus there. And then I thought the bones of the program, just with, national championships and many conference championships, Rose Bowl appearances. This place has that from within. And so that there's pride from alumni that really, brought a lot to this program. And that's been so much fun getting to know them over the last year.
Take me through the whirlwind of when you take the job. You mentioned it happened so fast. When you take the job, not only are you coming here and having to build your staff out, which you obviously took a lot of guys with you, but you're also having to recruit your own roster in the time of the transfer portal. You got to figure out who's committed to us, who do we want, who do we have to go after. There's so much going on. What was that first week like when you were on the job here? Yeah,
I'd say the first couple of weeks, and then it just things change too, and you learn a lot about the people that you have around you, and you just appreciate them even more. And it was great having a foundation with 6 coaches, strength coach, got Courtney Morgan's our director of player personnel, getting a lot of those pieces in place. There was a lot of positions still had to figure out, but just recruiting the roster part, you brought that up. Looking back on it, it was hour by hour sometimes. That's just how it was, because and you understand why. They don't know who you are. And these are important decisions, and this is a quarter school. And so these guys got to figure out by January 3rd where they're going to school. So, that Christmas break, there was a lot of phone calls, a lot of even, one-on-one conversations before, they left for Christmas break. But we got through it and, for the most part retained, our roster. And again, that's a tribute to these guys and how they felt about each other and the belief that they had and wanting to accomplish it. And then I give them and our staff credit for, meeting each other in the middle and trusting what was said, and then, January was a great month. I walked in this room and it was dead quiet for that first meeting on January 3rd, I think it was. And, by Friday, 5 days later, doing some workouts, and it was a whole different vibe. Just here we go. It felt like we were already, 5 months in. And so it's a tribute again to everyone involved, coaches and players.
When you got here, what was the first thing that either surprised you or that you said, we have to change this or fix this right away as we get going here?
Just that the guys never flinched.
Yeah.
I mean, we asked them to do something and they did it and then some.
Yeah.
That was really, there was not a lot of major things that we had to fix. Just, different schemes, offense, defense, special teams. And they knew that was going to happen, but they never flinched. And we were asking them to do a lot when it came to the training. And, they've seen their bodies change, and looking back on it, I know they're really happy that they just went all in.
Yeah.
But that's certainly a time, right, when you're doing different workouts and, kind of you could ask questions, but they never flinched.
Yeah. You mentioned a little bit of, we talked about why you took this job. The other part of it, too, is the commitment that you need from the administration to build a program in today's college football with all the resources and the arms race and everything that goes into it. Tell me about those conversations with the administration of saying, are we committed to winning at the highest level, and does the commitment that the administration and everything that goes into it match the expectation that they have for you?
Yeah, there's no question. Our president, President Kause, when I met with her, she expressed that, and I could tell that what she was saying, she meant, and she was excited, anxious, whatever, to get football back going again. And that was really during my interview, but that's continued on throughout. My contact with her and my support that I get from President Kause is great. And then, Jen Cohen, she is as aggressive as they get, and this is a place she's been passionate about and worked at, for a long time. And, this is home for her, and so, when you really look at it, and, she just keeps providing the resources, and, we'll go out there and help find what we need if there is anything that comes up, and very solution oriented and understands that, that as long as we have a plan and I can show her the why, she'll do everything she can to make it happen.
I mentioned the two quarterbacks, Bo Nix and Michael Penix Jr. This is essentially a battle for the Heisman Trophy in this game. Well, I sat down with Michael Penix Jr., talked about his journey, everything he's been through in his career, and what makes him who he is today. I also talked to Bo Nix's quarterback coach, Will Stein. He's also the offense coordinator, play caller. And Will Stein told us a bunch about Bo Nix as the person, Bo Nix the leader. Here it is. Let's start with Will Stein.
Let's talk about Bo Nix. Dude's seen a lot of college football. He really, I think, one of the coolest stories in college football, from like where he was at Auburn and now how he's playing at such a high level. You have him really dialed in. What's that been like for you, year one as the coordinator here, to have a guy like Bo Nix? Like, it's got to help a lot. Like he's seen a lot of ball.
Yeah, it helps a ton, and he's great for me to coach because he makes me better. He asks really good questions throughout the week. He's not just looking for the perfect play. He's looking for reasons why this is a good play and what are the issues with this play, so he can get us into a better play at the line of scrimmage. So he's extremely detailed, very smart when it comes to football. And like you said, he has played a lot of football. So I think about, I kind of reference him to when like poker was big. When we were younger, right? The internet age came about, online poker. And then you saw the old World Series of Poker champions kind of falling off the map because they're playing a hand at a time. Instead of the online guys that are playing hundreds of hands at a time. I kind of reference that to Bo. He's played so many snaps that he's seen virtually about everything that you could see as a quarterback at this point in his career. So that helps out a ton with our preparation, with being able to get to plays quicker at the line of scrimmage, with protection checks. He's an exceptional player. Number one, his talent is off the charts. He can make every throw. He can run. He's tough. But then what separates him, I think, from the rest of the pack is, not the Pac-12, the rest of quarterbacks across the country, is his ability to process information and do it really quickly.
How do you, as a play caller, during the week you're game planning, how do you involve him in that process? You have one of the top quarterbacks in the country. Like, how do you make sure that the game plan is, that he's getting the calls that he wants? Like, are you guys talking about that all throughout the week?
Yeah, for sure. We have a very open dialogue. I'm not the one out there playing. I'm glad I'm not anymore with how big and strong these guys are now. So he's the one plan, and he's got to feel really comfortable with the plan. And if he doesn't, he does it in an extremely respectful way. There's still a coach-to-player relationship, but he's able to verbalize it to me like, hey, can we go through this again? Can you talk about why we like this? So I know I can get to the answer if they give us something that we're not expecting or something that might be different. So he's highly involved, and he has his ideas that he brings to the table, and they're warranted because of the amount of film that he watches. It's not like he sees something cool on Twitter, which we all do, and want to just put something in. It's like, hey, I know that they're doing this. Have you guys thought about this? And it's either, we got that in, this play right here, this scheme, or shoot, bro, that's a really good idea. Let's think about it. Let's talk about it. And if it fits the plan, let's put it in.
Now let's hear directly from Michael Penix Jr. I want to dive more into kind of your whole journey of how you got here today. One of my favorite parts of your story is that it wasn't always rainbows and butterflies in your career. You had the ups and downs. You went through the adversity, and that's why people like rooting for you so much, I think, and what makes your success so special. During that time in Indiana, when you had the ACL injuries, when you were struggling to stay on the field, what was going through your mind during that time?
Yeah, it was tough. Coming to college, never getting hurt, like not even a sprained ankle. It was tough. Coming there and having that torn ACL my first year, and I had a shoulder injury the second year, another torn ACL the third year, and another shoulder injury the fourth year. It was tough. It was a lot of battling back and forth in my head. It was a lot of negative thoughts coming in my head. I was trying to push those out, as much as I could. But I feel like the main thing that kept me focused and locked in is just the people around me and my family. Always supporting me, being there with me through all those hard times, and just allowing me to understand that I'm playing for something bigger than myself. And in my eyes, like I just said, my little brothers, those are my why, and people, the ones that I do it for mainly is and I couldn't let them see me quit, And so in those times, I did have those thoughts, about, if this happens again, I might be done, But at the end of the day, I knew I couldn't be that quitter. I knew that I wanted to set that example for my brothers that, things aren't always going to be easy, but you got to bounce back and persevere through it all, and, continue to keep fighting, and, better days are going to come.
Yeah, and the other part that's really cool about that story is so many people, athletes, even people that aren't athletes, can relate to that, right? Like being in a dark time and coming out on the other side. During that time, when you had all those injuries, when you were going through it, was there one moment that you remember being the toughest time or the toughest moment, maybe the toughest injury, and kind of how'd you overcome it?
I'd say my second ACL tear was probably the toughest. Not as far as like pain wise, because I've been through the process before, mentally. But it was just mentally, I'm just like, dang, that's two torn ACLs. And so the way they did it, they took my patellar tendon out of one knee the first time. The second time, they took it out the other knee. So I'm like, okay, they took my patellar tendons.
We got nothing left.
Next thing they're going to take is a hamstring tendon, and they say that's not strong enough. So it's like, in my head, it's just like, dang, I can't go through this again. So it was tough. 2021 season was real tough on me, for me to be locked in and, just give my all for my team. And I feel like I was just battling a lot, with those mindsets of me, thinking about stopping playing football because of my injuries and stuff like that. And it was always like, if I tear my ACL again, like, I don't know what I'm going to do. So it was hard for me to enjoy football at that time. But, like I said, just having those people around me continue to support me and lift me up, they kept me going. So,
do you ever sit back in this offseason with your name in the Heisman conversation, all the hype, and think about where you were just a few years ago, having those thoughts?
Yeah, man, I always think about it, and that's why when you talk about the Heisman talks on social media and stuff like that, it's like, yeah, it sounds good, but at the end of the day, I know what I got to focus on, because 2 years ago, all these people, they weren't, they didn't believe in me, they didn't expect me to have the season that I had last year, and they didn't expect University of Washington to have that season. So, it just shows, people, you can't always fall into, social media, stuff like that, no matter positive or negative. You don't want to get too high or too low on things, because at the end of the day, those social media posts, they're going to be made regardless. It's people, they're going to tweet good things or bad things. It just depends on how you plan. Yeah. So, I just try to focus on what I can do for myself and my team, to help us win football games. And, that's why I keep my focus straight and my head straight.
If there's one lesson that you learned during those few years, what would it be?
I'll say just perseverance, and just times are gonna get hard. You know, I feel like I never faced adversity like that before, so it was real tough in those moments. You know, I didn't know how to react at first, and torn ACL is crazy because like when I got to college, that was like my first time hearing like, okay, torn ACLs is like a thing, because like in high school you don't think about injuries.
Yeah.
Like you don't think about anything like that. And in high school you'll get a sprained ankle or something like that. You don't really see too many torn ACLs and stuff like that. So it's like when I got that, it was like, dang, I'm out like for the season. So it was like something that was very different to me and hard at first, you know, but like I said, you know, just being able to overcome it and come out on top, you know, I'm just blessed to be in the position I'm in. So
going into this season, I feel like there is so much expectation, so much excitement. Your name is, you know, it's funny, I did a video today and I called you a Heisman sleeper. And I had to realize you're no longer a sleeper. You're just a Heisman candidate, right? Everyone's talking about you in that way. How are you balancing it all? It's so different than maybe what it was like going into last season. How are you balancing it? How does it feel? And does it kind of adjust your approach at all?
No, I'll just say just always keeping the main thing. And, you know, with me, you know, I'm just so laser focused and just locked in on, you know, winning football games and helping this team win football games. And, you know, that's my filter, you know. So each and every day I come out here and, you know, I hear those things, you know, I see it on social media sometimes. But, you know, I know at the end of the day I got to win football games help our team win football games for that to even happen, you know. So I always put my team first, you know, because without my offensive linemen, you know, those guys making plays on the outside and running backs as well, you know, it wouldn't be me. So
No doubt. But was there a moment maybe after this last season, this offseason, that you were like, where you felt like the attention or the national discussion about you and this program kind of reached a new level where you were like, oh, like it's on the map now?
Yeah, I feel like it did, you know. You know, in my eyes, you know, I always understood what I can do on the football field, and I knew what I bring to the table. And, you know, it's just a matter of time, you know, just being healthy, having a full off season. You know, I feel like that was a big part of me having a good year last year, you know, staying healthy, having a full off season. That was big. And, you know, having the guys around me, you know, helping make big time plays, you know, to help, you know, me look good in those ways, you know. So I'm just blessed to be here, and, you know, I'm blessed to have great teammates around me and great coaches as well.
I want to dig deeper a little bit into Oregon season, how the culture has changed at Oregon. And let's hear from their offensive coordinator, Will Stein, and their defensive coordinator, Tosh Lupoi. We'll start with Lupoi.
Day one, defensive unit meeting for training camp. What's the defensive culture, the fundamentals, the foundation that you're telling the unit?
Yeah, I think it's extremely important for us. So I don't need a piece of paper to say this. You know, it's ingrained in my soul and my mind. We want to play with a relentless effort, and we want to define that. So we define that in 3 ways. We want to, when the ball's snapped, we call it 6 seconds of hell. And going back to one of my strongest mentors and foundation up front, Pete Jenkins, you know, that's something as a young coach, 26 or 27 years old, me sitting at his house in Destin and studying all his film and clinics, that was something that always stood with my life is I want to attack and dominate my box for 6 seconds of hell and own my job, whatever that be. We want to play from point A to point B as fast and as violent as possible, and we want to have every single play with a +2 finish. So if I'm in the weight room, strength coach tells me to do 6 reps, I'm trying to do 8. If I'm supposed to run it through a line of 10 yards, I'm going to get 2 additional steps. So it's the first and foremost of our culture is relentless effort, and we define it in 3 ways. From there, it's ball excellence. You know, I think nobody would argue the strongest correlation into wins and losses is turnover margin. So for us not to put that first and foremost in our culture would be silly. So that's something, and then we define it as the will and the desire to finish on the ball, attack the ball. You know, that's something that I've taken great pride in and feel like almost every stop I've been in, you know, that's somewhere that I strive to improve the organization of attacking the ball, how we do it, the detail we do it, the study of TV copy. You know, that's been a success for us. Some of the things, you know, we could have improved a lot from last season, but that was something of being top 10 in the country and continuing that this season. And then the third part of it, and if you will, it's kind of 1A, 1B, 1C are all together on the same level as what we call the power of unit here, you know, but basically some playing for something bigger than just yourself, and playing for a brotherhood, and all the strongest mentors of mine, of Nick Saban and Kirby Smart and Dan Quinn, and the individuals that I've been blessed to coach with and play a major role in my life and my coaching career. These are kind of bits and pieces that taking from each coach and then, putting my own spin on it and, trying to have the defense really represent those three things.
Now, this is Will Stein.
You guys had a lot of success at UTSA. I mean, I think at one point you averaged like 50 points a game, or maybe you did. Just during your last year there, you guys were rolling. What do you think it was about the offense, and maybe what factors went into all the success you had?
Well, great players always help.
That helps, right?
Yeah. I've been fortunate everywhere I've been, and really as a player too, I've been a part of a team that has a really good quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Not to say I was a great quarterback when I played at Louisville, but I was able to play with Teddy Bridgewater and really see the impact of a top-notch player at that position, what it can do for a university, a program, coaching staff. It helps a lot to have a great quarterback. So we had Teddy at Louisville. When we went to Texas, we had Sam Ehlinger and Shane Buechele. Go to Lake Travis, have Hudson Card. Go to UTSA, have Frank Harris. Now I'm here at Oregon with Bo Nix. So having the right guy at quarterback helps a ton. And then schematically, it's just trying to erase all problems that can happen in a game, playing to the strengths of your team, not trying to fit a player into my offense, fit my offense into the player, right? Like Frank Harris was a great dual threat quarterback, so we ran a bunch of zone read, power read, play action pass, and quick game. That was his bread and butter per se. You come to Oregon, you find out what Bo is really made of, what he's good at, and you play to their strengths. You don't try to fit a square peg in a round hole. Try to keep it simple, play fast, play free, and just go execute at a high level.
The big differentiator for Oregon, in my opinion, is Dan Lanning, their head coach. It starts with the leader of the program. I asked both offensive coordinator Will Stein and defensive coordinator Tosh Lupoi what makes Dan Lanning so special. Here's what they said. We'll start with Tosh Lupoi.
You guys had been together in Alabama a little bit, right? So you saw him in that light, and now he's the head coach at Oregon and calls you up to be his defensive coordinator. How did that relationship evolve, and how excited were you when he called you about this job?
Yeah, I was excited. This extremely fortunate for me. This was the third time I was afforded this opportunity to be the D coordinator at Oregon in my career. And the major difference is Dan Lanning. Dan really, he worked for me, matter of fact, at the University of Alabama.
GA?
That's right. Yeah, he was a GA of mine. And everybody noticed quickly, just his approach, what a great fit he was with our staff. His growth mindset, he was someone that I knew when he left Alabama and he got a better opportunity at that time, we were going to stay in touch, and he was somebody that it was like, I want to hire this guy, whatever my next step is, or back here, which I attempted to do. And so shortly after that, Coach Saban agreed, and we tried to hire Dan as a full-time staff member at Alabama, knowing we were going to have some movement. We were actually preparing for a national title. We were in the semifinal game against Clemson, and Georgia was playing against Oklahoma. And whether Kirby got wind of it, because Dan wasn't self-promoting himself, and we were literally going to hire Dan right after the national title game. So we were playing Georgia, and I checked in with him about that Tuesday or Wednesday, and Kirby had already stole him to Georgia. He was there, in some aspect working for them. I'm not too sure if that was even legal, so we have to look into that with Kirby. But he was already there, so no, and so he was there on his own will, getting ready, and so he was almost apologetic, like I didn't know what to do, and there was basically, felt like there was something for sure here as opposed to what you guys, were most likely going to do, and we stuck in strong contact after that. Even when I went to the National Football League, we would constantly do things like Zoom and jump on things and talk about some coverage concepts and pressure concepts. And, we just stuck in pretty solid contact there. And then sure enough, I was sitting in my office in Jacksonville, had a really good thing going there in Jacksonville, and had some other opportunities with some other organizations as that year was concluding. And Dan had asked if I had some interest into coming here. And when I told my wife that, she kind of knew within 30 minutes, probably like, okay, we're probably moving back to college football, and just knowing my respect level of Dan. But again, going back into that growth mindset aspect of the game, and coming here, and then even he's exceeded my expectations of what he's done here, and so much more from a defensive standpoint. But his approach to the offense, the special teams, the connection of the team, how strong and important culture is to him off the field. It's been an awesome experience, and it's really cool to see just our immediate success, but also acknowledgement of continuing the things that we can all improve.
Yeah.
Now, Will Stein on Dan Lanning.
How is it coaching under a defensive-minded head coach, a guy like Coach Lanning? I feel like a lot of head coaches in college football are offensive guys, and you got to kind of fit in under their system. Like, what's it been like with Coach Lanning like that?
It's been incredible. He's extremely open to new ideas. He wants to be cutting edge. He's still everything that we want to do offensively, he supports.
Yeah.
And he does a great job of really overseeing the entire program. He's not just a defensive-minded guy that sits in there all day and game plans with Tosh and that crew. Like, he is very balanced in his approach. He teaches situational football better than anybody I've been around. He's very in tune with cutting-edge offense and what gives them problem on defense and how we can use that in our system. And he's supportive. He's a great leader and does a really good job of prepping us throughout the week. And then on game days, it's let's go win, let's go score points, and whatever it takes to win.
The job these two head coaches have done, Kalen DeBoer at Washington and Dan Lanning at Oregon, is a masterpiece in perfecting their culture, the players, and the leadership on their team. Let's dive into how these two coaches approach the game from the head coaches themselves. Kalen DeBoer up first.
I want to ask about the beginning of your career when you were the head coach at Sioux Falls and all the success you had there. How did that time at a program like that kind of develop your coaching philosophy and who you are today at a big-time program like this? Mm-hmm. And how did that kind of mold you into who you are today?
Yeah, I guess I was fortunate enough to play under a coach who really based his leadership style on loving his players, serving his players, Bob Young. And he just passed away in January, but that's really the mentor, and that's all I knew as a player. And then I coached for him for 5 years, took over for him when he retired. And, I just loved coaching there. I really didn't feel like I needed to go anywhere else. I don't even know if I understood what the levels were of football, and what it took to get there. I just loved coaching ball, and then making that program going from good to great to like a national powerhouse was a lot of fun, and love those players, love that everything that happened there. But they're just, you kind of understand. There's other challenges, and the right one came up to leave in 2010 to go to Southern Illinois, and kind of moved on from there.
When you look back and think back to yourself during that time, and then you being here today, how do you think you've changed the most from a philosophy standpoint? Maybe it's strategy, just you as a coach in that time period.
From leadership style, it's very similar, and just caring for the players, giving them one of the greatest experiences that they could ever imagine. And developing just a unit to where a team where they just love each other and they do it for each other, and that's why they go to work every day. But offense, defense. The kind of what we do has evolved. There's more coaches. There's more film to be able to watch.
More resources.
More resources. Yeah. There's more of that, but. We do a lot of shifting and motioning. Well, we were shifting and motioning a lot back in 2006, and so, why we do it. And, the one thing that is kind of nice, there were some mistakes that I made too, back then. And when you can do it at a young age and it's not in the spotlight of maybe, not just thousands, but tens and hundreds of thousands of fans and so forth, you learn from those and you remember those.
Yeah. I feel like anyone who's reached the level that you're at some point you catch a break in your career. Some point something goes the right way and it propels you along. What's the moment that you called a break during your coaching career?
I think there's been big at Sioux Falls. I mean, I think that's where the big wins, where you came from behind to win a semifinal game and win a national championship, and then you did it again the next year. Mm-hmm. And, you win 3 national championships. I mean, people kind of take note. But maybe a big game would have been in 2009 beating North Dakota, who was a transitioning FCS program. And we were at Sioux Falls, and that opened up doors and opportunities. And I think in the end, though, you make your breaks by just, getting to know people, enjoying the game, trying to help each other. And those relationships have really, been ones that have brought more opportunities to myself, in a lot of these cases.
You mentioned a lot about loving your players and relationships. When someone asked for you to define your culture here, your coaching philosophy, how do you define it?
Yeah, I mean, to me, the what we're trying to build is going to be player-led. Yeah. And so, helping them all feel comfortable with saying things to each other, the other guy not getting defensive. And that, includes coaches too, right? When coaches are critical and demanding excellence out of you, there's got to be a relationship piece that is so strong to where they trust, right? They trust, and the communication can happen, and those are the key ingredients to building a relationship. And those relationships happen, and coaches can do their job. Players trust, believe, and they put in the work. And so it's always the people that you have around you that are going to have you go in one direction or the other. But our non-negotiables that we talk about is a family atmosphere. And I know everyone talks about that, but I just think we're super tight on, we don't always get along, right? That's what a family does. But in the end, you love each other and you care about each other. We have a high level of accountability, coaches to coaches, players to players, coaches and players for each other. And then I think there's a toughness that we're building. Last year I thought as the season went along, we built a toughness physically and mentally. And, these guys, we're training them in the off season to be machines, to where they can withstand the grind of a season. But mentally, we just do, I think as a staff, a pretty good job of putting them in a lot of situations that can translate and work forward thinking on, this is what our response is going to be when adversity strikes. And so the last thing, just a 1-0 mindset, just literally everyone says it, but I think our guys really believe it, flush, learn from it, accept it, own it, whatever it was that just happened, flush it, and then move on, play in the present.
Now, Dan Lanning and how he approaches the game.
You have a really unique balance, I think, as a head coach. Not that I've spent a lot of time around you, but from the outside and seeing you today, you have a unique balance of being young and cool and hip and like the players like you, but also being extremely tough and disciplined and having great culture. I think a lot of times young coaches kind of get put in like one or the other, right? You get in the bucket of like, he's just kind of a cool guy that the players like and he recruits well, or he's a ball guy that's tough. How do you balance both of those and kind of playing in both those lanes? Because I think you do a pretty good job of it.
Yeah, I think you have to be yourself, right? But one of the things that really helped me is I have 3 boys. I treat our players in our program no different than I want that. I want discipline for my sons. I want people to have a high standard of performance, but I also want somebody that cares and can put their arm around them and can relate to them. And if you're on either side of that spectrum, you're going to miss out on a part of that if you don't take the time to know who your players are, get to know what makes them tick. I think you're going to lose sight of a lot of that.
Yeah. What's the foundation of your culture here, or your philosophy as you build this program?
Well, we talk about our DNA traits a lot, and that was something when I got here. It wasn't like, it wasn't like bulletin board material. We're just going to slap this up in the locker room, and this is who we're going to be. It was we took 4 months of really sitting back and saying, okay, what are our strengths? What are our weaknesses? What matters, and what's going to equate to wins and success here at Oregon? So those DNA traits are connection, growth, toughness, and sacrifice, and that's kind of the things that I think. If you look at our pro, if you're watching us on game day and you say, okay, that team, what are the traits that describe them? I hope that's what you see. I hope you see a tough team. I hope you see a team, when it comes to sacrifice, it's probably one of the hardest ones for people in today's day and age about, you know what, I'm okay with us winning even though I didn't have 10 catches, right? Or I didn't get to be the guy in the blitz package. And that's something you see show up every single day. And then connection is one of the biggest pieces for us of you're going to do more for a guy that you know. And, sitting in this room, in this team room, we had guys in the front of this room that cry, in front of each other because they're sharing stories that they've never shared with anybody in this room. You'll never do that unless you take the time to peel back the layers and talk about something else besides football. Yeah. So I think those things really stick out. And then growth's about, we're not going to stay the same, right? You've probably heard me say this week, it's not bye week, it's growth week, right? How are we getting better? What are we improving on? And hopefully those are the traits that show up in our culture.
I asked Dan Lanning and Kalen DeBoer, what's the path to a championship at your program? Let's hear directly from those two coaches how they're going to make it happen. First up is Dan Lanning.
You guys are having a great season, and I don't want to talk too much in the future, but if Oregon's to win a national championship, which I know is your goal, what are the one or two things that still need to happen?
Well, just, no off days, right? And that consistent approach, I'm talking about that 20-mile march. I think the resources exist here. I think we have got phenomenal players, but I've been a part of a lot of teams that have great players, right? It's going to be that ability to sacrifice down the stretch and whatever's needed. Right? Are you going to be able to give that? Are you going to give what's needed when your best is needed? And it might involve you, but it might not. And us being able to lay down and sacrifice in those moments to get the ultimate goal, I think that's going to be the secret.
Yeah. Last couple of things I got for you. What's the best advice you've ever received?
Best advice I've ever received.
Or given, or any motivating piece of advice.
Yeah, it's a hard question. I mean, I guess I've just gotten a lot of great advice over the years. I'm trying to think of something specific. Coach Graham gave me some good advice early on. He said, if this old man can rattle you, if he can take your confidence, if you let him steal your confidence, then what are you really allowing to happen? And I think learning that early that you can fail but still have confidence in your approach. But learning, early on that, you're not always going to have success. Learning through that adversity is maybe one of the biggest keys. And then I think from Coach Smart, I learned, and really Coach Saban both, that you can learn as much from a win as a loss. I always was enthralled and in awe whenever we could come in from a game that we just had a shutout. And you would have thought we lost the game because they were able to see all the ways that people would attack us in the future if we don't fix this problem, if we don't fix this. So being able to learn a lot from wins, not just losses. And then, again, not letting anybody ever take your confidence.
Now let's go to Kalen DeBoer on how he's building a championship team.
If this place in the next couple of years, or maybe even this year, is to win a championship, win a national championship, what are maybe the one or two things that still need to happen in order to be able to get there?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I've been a part again. I think there's obviously major differences, but there's similarities to what it takes to win a championship, and I've been through quite a few of those years. And you got to catch some breaks along the way. You got to stay healthy, or not have one position in particular where injuries fall apart and hit you. You got to win some close games, and I don't care how good you are, there's going to be a game or two that comes down to the wire, and to be able to pull through and win those close games. But I think right now it's just not we've done a great job, but never taken anything for granted, and we are focusing on that a lot. We're learning from other people who maybe have taken for granted. We're letting guys talk about situations they've been in where maybe something like that happened, but just, again, focusing on now. And last year, I think we got through November because we focused only on that day, that week, that game. We didn't get caught up in week 2 or week 3 or week 4. And that's the way it's going to be this year too. I mean, our November is tough, but, November ain't going to matter if we don't take care of September.
No, it's a great point.
This game couldn't have bigger implications. It is what I think the biggest game of the year in college football. Playoff play-in game, Heisman on the line, elite offenses throwing the football around, 2 great head coaches, everything you want. The last battle of the Pac-12 in this game, it's going to be remarkable. It's what I love about college football. A prediction for this game, I think Oregon wins this one. It's going to be an electric matchup. I think Oregon's too physical in this matchup. If there was ever an X factor, though, it's Michael Penix Jr. Who he is as a leader, what he's been through, his mentality. He thrives in this kind of moment. Don't sleep on Michael Penix Jr. in this game. If Washington pulls off the upset, it'll be because their quarterback played lights out.